South Carolina's on the verge of passing a bill that would end Obamacare in that state.
There are some legal questions surrounding this attempt, but if they get through, other states could well follow suit.
Nullification, the constitutional concept most often forgotten in today's rule of law, has been reinvigorated by wins by people like Sheriff Nick Finch in Florida. Now the state of South Carolina is using nullification to oust Obamacare. Constitutional Sheriff Richard Mack, who is a nullification victor in his own right, talks to us tonight to tell us about nullification and how South Carolina can be successful. Thanks for joining us, Sheriff.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Always is a pleasure. Now, Sheriff, before we talk about the situation that's going on in South Carolina, can you tell us about nullification and your experiences with it?
Well, we've done that for many decades now. Sheriffs in Idaho have done it back in 2003. Sheriff in Eureka County, Nevada did it against the Bureau of Land Management, and even sheriffs in California have been doing it. I did it when I was sheriff back in the 90s. Sheriff Rogers has done it in Indiana. Sheriff Palmer has done it in Oregon. Sheriff Arpaio has done it somewhat in Arizona. Sheriff David A. Clark Jr. has done it in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. Sheriff Finch just did a huge one in Florida, and he even got arrested for it, but he laughed at that and beat him at court. And so this is not anything new, and I certainly didn't create it. I helped push it along, and I'm kind of the messenger here about making it go bigger, better, and faster and more often. And when I sued the federal government back in the 90s when I was sheriff in Arizona, I guess that established a huge precedent, and it was a landmark victory for state sovereignty and for the 10th Amendment. And now we finally have other state politicians and leaders, specifically in Idaho, in South Carolina, that are paying attention to this and using it. To what I've said on your show several times is that this is the equation and the formula for stopping Obamacare or any other federal mandate that the states want out of.
That's exactly right, Sheriff. And you've been talking about this. You're an advocate for state nullification as well as many other people. We see now people like Ben Swan getting behind state nullification and others. But you're definitely one of the first people, or one of the more prominent people, I should say, to bring about this idea. So for the people who can't exactly wrap their heads around this, you have Obamacare, you have state nullification or nullification in general. How do these things two mix?
Well, they mix. They don't mix, and that's why you can stay away from it. It is oil and water, and the states have the authority through the 10th Amendment to nullify and stand against anything that comes out of Washington, D.C. that is contrary to state sovereignty. First and foremost, let me direct every one of your listeners and the people who pay attention to InfoWars all across the country and perhaps the world. You've got to get a copy of my Supreme Court case. Now, at sheriffmack.com, you can pull off the entire case. It's there. Or at CSPOA, that's CSPOA.org, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association.org, CSPOA.org, you can get a highlighted version of the case so you don't have to go through the entire case, because I've already done that. And I put it in a little pocket-sized booklet. Now, everyone in this country needs to see this so you can see it for yourself, see the evidence, see the proof that this case does exactly what we are saying it's supposed to do, Jakari, and that is provide the states and counties and cities with the ammunition to do exactly what State Rep Tom Davis is doing in South Carolina through House Bill 3101, that is going to nullify Obamacare for the state of South Carolina. Every state can do it. Every county can do it. Every city can do it. Just start acting on what is already there. And right now we have a Christmas special on this. It's only 80 cents to get this little booklet. You should get dozens of them. Mm-hmm. Pass them around. I have an email right here from somebody else who is forwarding this information to all of their state legislators on an email blast. Okay, so let's make sure we know and understand what we're talking about here. The United States Supreme Court decision, when a couple of sheriffs sued the federal government and won, yours truly being the one who started that, says that the states retain, quote, an inviolable sovereignty, end quote. It also states this. Now, this is the big one being used by South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It states that the federal government may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program, end quote. Now, there's a lot of things about in this decision that supports that and substantiates that and completely corroborates what those principles mean. And, I mean, it says so much in here that you've got to see it. There's not time on your show today to discuss all these key points. So people need to get a hold of this, Jakari, and use it for the tool that it was meant to be. And I would also recommend getting the DVD set. We have everything marked off 50 to 70% for Christmas. Get the DVD set that's entitled Erecting the Barriers, because that's exactly what the states and counties and cities are supposed to be doing. This landmark decision spells it out, and it even tells you how to do it.
That's what you need.
Right from the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's what you need, somebody from experience. So you're telling them from experience how to go about these steps. So that definitely makes you an authority on that. And I do encourage our viewers to go out and get those pieces for them.
Can South Carolina unilaterally decide not to follow a federal law?
Well, basically what South Carolina is offering to do is to instruct employees of the state of South Carolina not to participate in facilitating the law and to prohibit expenditure of public funds on the law. Translate, if the president wants Obamacare in South Carolina, the feds will have to pay for it and the feds will have to establish it. So the question is, can they do that? And the answer is yes. So South Carolina can do this.
So according to the Constitution, that state, Columbia State Capitol, can tell their employees not to accept a federal program.
No, it cannot stop their employees from signing up for Obamacare individually as private persons, but it can stop their employees from using their government jobs to cooperate with the federal government or to enforce its laws. Allison and Bill, if enough states do this, it will gut Obamacare, because the federal government does not have the resources or the wherewithal. We know it doesn't have the wherewithal. They can't operate a website. But it doesn't even have the resources to go into each of the individual states if they start refusing. But if enough Republican governors and legislators say, we're not going to do it, the president will have serious issues, more problems than he has today.
It's constitutional for states to prohibit their employees from complying with federal law.